So the next video that we have would be the 4 builds for Kelly. Now, Kelly, in my opinion, is the most balanced of the hunters. So, in my opinion, each hunter has a designated design if you look at them. Now, all 3 hunters besides Kelly have a ranged weapon mastery to a specific weapon. So, Hunter Ash is spec'd into the double barrel, which is a long gun, and his double barrel mastery is at level 25. So until you get him to level 25, you have no real incentive to stay on your common double barrel. You can upgrade that to, you know, a blue, pretty much any higher rarity boomstick or shotgun. As long as it's pretty much a boomstick, a shotgun, a double barrel, one of those 3, you're alright. Because he should be the long arm king. Once you hit 25, the weapon master bonus makes it so that you do more damage with a common double barrel than you do with blue, and I think the purple even, on the other 2 versions, like the boomstick and the shotgun. So unless you have a legendary shotgun or a legendary boomstick, you're probably going to stay with that common double barrel, just because you are getting more benefits because of that weapon master. So everybody's weapon masters in the game, by the way, if you do not know, are 20% with 2 exceptions. Scotty's Lumberjack Axe Mastery is 25. Whether that's bugged or intentional, it is 25. And Ed's Crossbow Mastery is 10%. But that's because it's for both crossbows, which is going to bring me to Ed. Now, Ed, to me, is designed around the crossbow. His weapon mastery is at level 10. If you don't like the crossbow, before this patch, it's kind of interesting. Before this last patch, where they introduced the second crossbow, I would have told you that if you don't like the crossbow, you don't have to play it. You should spec him towards the crossbow, but it's not a necessity. Now I'm going to disagree with you on that. Because of the explosive crossbow, you want to spec him towards it. Because you have 2 options. If you're not good with hitting the crossbow, you can just use it like a AoE shotgun, pretty much. It's not hard. Instead of aiming for headshots, you're just aiming for body shots and you're good. And if you're good with headshots, then you can aim for the crossbow and just ping, ping, ping. Although I still don't recommend using a crossbow against Eligos. Now, the fact that his weapon mastery is only 10% means, in my opinion, you can afford to flex him against, like, an Eligos. Against a Necromancer or a Warlord, I definitely would want to stay with a crossbow, because you do get headshots a lot easier on them. Eligos units move around a lot faster, they are a lot harder to hit. They interrupt you a lot more often than the other 2 units do. Well, not including basic possessed Necromancer, 14-hit combo. But Ed's kind of based around long-range combat with the crossbow. Hunter Ash is close range. And at mid-range, you have Amanda. And Amanda's built around her pistol. Now, my last video where I covered her, and I talked about that, she's kind of a good mid-range. You have to build her for long-range or close range, depending on how you want to do it. Her level 25 really only benefits from either the pistol or the lever action. You might get value out of the revolver, but the rate of fire is relatively slow. You might get value out of the saw gun, but the saw gun is fucking terrible. I'm sorry. So she's really spec'd around the pistol. But to me, I don't mind that. The pistol is a good weapon. I see a lot of people shooting on the pistol, oh my god, the damage per shot is so low, you run out of ammo fast, but she can obliterate very quickly. And the thing that people don't realize, so ammo for days, people talk about, oh, ammo for days is better with something like a shotgun or a blunderbuss. Ammo for days does factor in your gun's base rate of fire. So if you're using a fast rate of fire weapon, you can keep spamming those shots out. You can burn a boss down very quickly. And one thing people discount with her weapon mastery, which is, remember, 20%, it would be better if it was a generic revolver, if it was, like, handgun mastery, as opposed to just straight pistol mastery, so you could spec into the revolver. But the thing for it with me, you start with the pistol, and at level 10 you get your weapon mastery. The balance bar buff that you get from the pistol mastery is good enough, in my opinion, if you wanted to spec her into it. If you wanted to put the points in. I could put my 2 remaining points into stopping power if I didn't want quicker cooldown. I personally want quicker cooldown because I run out of ammo a lot. And that is common, no matter how good you are in aim. But another option would be that. Those are the 4 videos for Kelly build. So why am I explaining how the other hunters work? Well, because Kelly is the melee hunter. Every hunter has a certain type of weapon that they're based around, and melee is Kelly's. Her first weapon mastery is the meat hammer. Now, this is a controversial opinion. The meat hammer is one of the worst weapons in the game. But you can build Kelly into a meat hammer god. It is possible. So the first thing I want to mention with the meat hammer is that the meat hammer balance bar buff is actually relatively substantial when you combine it with the fact that in this last patch, as of the making of this video, all of the 3-speed and 5-speed melee weapon light attacks got an attack speed bonus, as did demon light attacks, but we're not going to talk about that. So you can actually dish out an absurd amount of damage. Now, it's actually interesting to me. I picked up a legendary meat hammer on a game where I was playing Henry. And I did an absurd amount of damage with that thing. Now, obviously, that's on a warrior. But I actually did more damage with that legendary meat hammer than I did a common sword. And normally that doesn't happen. Part of that is due to the attack speed bonus. If the attack speed bonus wasn't there on the 3-speed and 5-speed weapons, that would not be the case. So normally I would tell you that her meat hammer is terrible. Don't use it. In my opinion, a meat hammer for her is alright. It's not the worst weapon in the world. It's not something you ignore like every other character is going to ignore. But you're also going to move on from it relatively quickly. Unless you're specifically, like, have, like, a legendary, or even a purple. I'd say a purple would be. The other thing that buffs her melee is her Battle Frenzy, which is now no longer bugged. It works properly. You can use this without reckless abandon. Your melee damage increases the longer you are in sustained combat. So, this is very complicated, so bear with me. You can get up to 15 stacks of this ability. Okay? You can get up to 30 stacks? No, 15. You can get up to 15 stacks of this ability. So 15 seconds. And each stack is at 2%. Excuse me. So, you can get up to 30% bonus melee damage in sustained combat. Now, sustained combat is still a little bit hard to define. Sometimes you'll lose it immediately. Sometimes you'll keep it. You kind of have to pay attention to the bar on the right below your fear meter with those little green buffs and debuffs to let you know what is what. I really wish those were bigger, or they were like Dead by Daylight status afflictions on the side of the screen. That being said, this ability does make her a melee queen. I was about to say king, I apologize. Now, she does have 2 interesting abilities not a lot of people really pay attention to, and that is her bleed damage. Now, the first thing I want to mention is that her active power is pretty good. Her active power has a cooldown of 60 seconds. It lasts for 10 seconds. That was recently buffed. It used to be 7 seconds. That's something in the patch notes that was not featured, kind of like the support Ashley. What it does is it makes it so that all of your ranged attacks, that's important to note, when you activate this ability, will do 20% of their ranged damage as bleed for 5 seconds. Now, here's the thing I want to mention on your numbers. Now, a lot of people don't pay attention to this. That 20% range damage as bleed is subtracted from your base damage. So let's say you are using let's say you do 150 a shot. This is not accurate, but let's say you're doing 150. 20% of your range damage is going to be bleed. That means that 30 damage is subtracted right away. So you're actually dealing 120 damage. That remaining 30 damage is then spread out over bleed duration. Now, this affects all of your shots. This effect can stack, but it is important to note that your damage is removed up front. So if you're thinking, oh, I can headshot you, I pop my power and I can headshot you and get bleed damage, you're losing headshot damage as well. The main reason you would run it, in my opinion, is because you don't consume stamina on dodges for the duration. I've actually used this to juke some killers out before. I've done that on the 7-second duration. I was able to literally force a boss unit to chase me a good couple of car rides away. Just dash, dash, dash. I burn all my stamina. Pop my ability. Dash, dash, dash. My stamina regen. Dash, dash, dash. Keep dashing. That was funny. I ended up dying eventually, but that's a better use for it. Now, your counter shot is your level 10 passive. This is a fairly weak passive, by the way. It makes it so that your next ranged attack after a successful dodge does inflict bleeding damage on your target for a short duration. It has the same 5-second duration, and it's 5% of the weapon damage per second. The important thing to know is it does not subtract that bleeding damage from the initial total. It is up front. Or it is in addition to your other stuff. This is more valuable to me than her active power, but the two can stack. So she's kind of designed to be this hybrid between you dodge, you shoot, you melee instead of reloading, you dodge, you shoot, you melee, you dodge, you shoot, you melee, kind of like that. Kind of free-flowing, kind of like Deadpool with his gun fu, if you ever played any game with Deadpool. So after the 11-minute intro, my apologies for that, let's talk about your basic hunter build. Your basic hunter build is going to be the same for every hunter, and it costs 16 points. I'm sorry to break it to you, this is your basic hunter build right here. So you have your 1 point in the long shot, which is just to open up the rest of the tree. 4 points in the hollow points. This is to give you the bonus range weapon damage. It takes your passive 50% bonus to range weapons and brings it up to 75%. This is really good. 1 point in staying power. This will just get access to the rest of the tree. 3 points in Artful Dodger. This gives you an extra 2 dodges. You don't need Artful Dodger maxed at 35. You can leave it at 20. But I prefer that extra stamina. Deadly up close, because you're going to be engaging in melee a decent amount. It helps to have this. This, in my opinion, is the better option. Most demon players are going to try and rush you anyways, so they're going to be in that threshold where you really do benefit from it. And then last chance, increase the damage dealt by the last bullet in a gun. This is a permanent buff to one-shot weapons like the blunderbuss and the crossbow. If you run something like a boomstick or a hunting rifle, you can always just leave one shot in it and do it that way. This is your basic build. Now, the other 3 builds that we need to cover. Shit. The other 3 builds that we have to cover are going to be based around your different ways you can build. If you want to build into fear and health resistance, you can do that. Fear no evil at 3. Ain't afraid of no trap at 2, ready for anything at 1, industrial strength at 3. The main purpose of this build is you reduce your fear from everything, 20%, 25% bonus fear reduction from demon traps. This is really just there to get access to industrial strength. This is a decent build on her because of the fact you're going to be engaging in melee combat. That extra health is more helpful to you. The downside to the build is that you do lose effectiveness with your range weapons. And you're not actually benefiting your melee weapons at all. This is mostly just for keeping you alive in melee combat. The next build that you want to go into would be a headshot build. Most hunters want to go into a headshot build. So basically you want to pick which one of these 2 is more important to you. Do you want a little bit of dismemberment and a little bit of spread, or do you want a little bit of recoil and a little bit of balance block? Personally, in my opinion, it doesn't really matter. I would take this as my personal preference. I'd rather reduce the recoil than the spread, because the spread means you're locking yourself into shotguns almost. And then you have 4 points into Wig Splitter, and your remaining 3 points you can kind of do whatever with. For the purposes of this build, I would probably put them in the critical cooldown, and maybe an extra point in staying power. The purpose of this build is obviously you're playing around your range weapon damage. You want to have more headshot damage. You lose some of that with the bleed damage, so this does help make it up. And the quicker cooldown is for you to escape more, to have higher survivability. But in my opinion, it's not really necessary. The last build to cover is the build I use. This is the melee build. So you have 1 point in the light therapy. This is just get access to the rest of the tree. 2 points in the lone wolf. Now, technically you only need 1 point. I'm going to put the 2 points in there because that's a massive bonus. It's also important to note that ranged characters, the hunter class, deal 30% less melee damage by default. This lone wolf at 2 bonus, if you are by yourself, you completely remove that penalty. Then your 4 points into devastating force. This means if you're by yourself, you're actually dealing 15% bonus melee damage. That can catch a lot of demons off guard. And remember that you do have your bonuses from Battle Frenzy. So you can cap point by yourself. You can kind of be a do-it-all kind of hunter. The downside is you are glass cannon. If you don't know how to dodge, if you fuck up your dodges, or if you don't have a good enough melee weapon, you're going to die on this build. You could make the argument that you could take Lone Wolf off and just leave it there. I really don't like that. And even if you are in a team, if you're playing with your teammates and you don't get the bonus on Lone Wolf, the bonus damage from Devastating Force does remove your passive 30% negative to a 15% negative. So, it's overall better. Your 2 remaining points can pretty much go wherever. I don't use her ability that often. I think the 60-second cooldown on her is fine. So, for me, I just put the extra points in the staying power. I like extra stamina. But she can kind of flex around any gun you want. She's more important on her melee choice more than anything on this build. So, if you like playing around with a versatile amount of guns, just picking up guns and switching guns constantly, she's the character I would recommend for you as a